expert is Jim Cosgrove. He's Vice President and Principal at Kleinfelder, Incorporated. He's a registered professional engineer in New Jersey with 30 years of experience in water resources management, with specific expertise in water quality modeling, watershed and stormwater management, and environmental impact assessment. He received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Lafayette College and a Master's of Engineering in Water Resource Systems Engineering from Cornell University. Don't forget your note cards and to pass them in. And with that, Jim.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm the poor slob that has to follow 2 PhDs, one who's kind of sarcastic, and tell you about money. But the title of my talk is Funding Opportunities. Can a stormwater utility be a solution? Stormwater utilities talk about raising eyebrows. It's a very politically charged issue right now. And I'm going to try to shed a lot of light on that. I'm hopefully not going to get into any politics, but you can make the decision as to whether you think a stormwater utility could be useful to you. But first, I think we have to, I think it's pretty obvious to most of you, but I don't think it's obvious to the average person in New Jersey. We have to put a bigger focus on stormwater management. Think about how we manage all our other utilities. Things like our wastewater systems, our drinking water systems, electricity, natural gas, roads and bridges, telecommunications. We have actual utilities focused on managing those things, but we don't have that for stormwater. In our history, what we typically did is buried our stormwater management infrastructure and hoped it worked. And hopefully, the pipes would continue to work and we'd get water as quickly as we could from the point at which it was generated to the local stream or lake. So we have to start paying more attention to stormwater. Now, there are a lot of options to fund stormwater management. There are DEP funding sources. Some of you may have heard of 319H grants. Those are great, but they're never going to provide enough money to fund the kinds of things that you folks may want to do on your lakes. There's a New Jersey Water Bank, used to be the Environmental Infrastructure Trust Fund. That's a great program, but it's typically a loan, a very low interest loan, rather than a grant. So you got to pay that money back. Sometimes you can get it even at 0 interest, but you still have to pay the principal back. The way we pay for most of our stormwater management right now is through municipal taxes. Right now, a municipality has to deal with their stormwater management. They have a municipal separate storm sewer system permit, and they're required to do certain things. The way that's being funded right now is through municipal taxes. That may not be the most efficient way of dealing with stormwater management. Also, charitable foundation grants. Some of you may have applied for grants over the years. There's great things being done with foundation grants, but again, not going to be enough money to do the kinds of things that we have to do. Finally, there's the stormwater utility, which I'm going to go into a little bit more here. That is an option to provide a funding source for stormwater management. How's that? Okay. What's the problem? The problem is the way we deal with most stormwater now is at the municipal level. But water doesn't follow municipal boundaries. So dealing with stormwater at a municipal level is usually an inefficient way of doing it. It's much more efficient to look at a regional solution. And Chris and Steve both mentioned this issue. The advantages of a regional approach is you provide it's much more cost effective typically. You eliminate duplication of efforts. You maximize opportunities for grants and loans. You streamline regulatory requirements, and usually it results in larger improvements that are more measurable. Well, how do do you implement a regional approach? You have to have leadership. Now, I think Chris referred to a watershed champion as a crazy person. I might have misunderstood him, but that's not, I would think of him as a champion. Somebody who's really passionate about the watershed, who's going to go out on a limb and fight for that watershed. You really need that on a regional solution. You need investment. You have to be willing to spend money to get things started. It's not just the money to make the improvement, it's the money to figure out what the best improvements are. Planning, you need to develop a plan. Steve mentioned this. You have to have a plan, particularly with the lakes, because otherwise you're likely going to fail. Okay, so how could a stormwater utility help the regional type of approach? Well, a stormwater utility can cross municipal boundaries. That's a good thing. It can provide incentive for property owners who want to reduce or treat runoff. One of the big issues with a stormwater utility compared to doing this at the municipal level, being funded through municipal taxes, is that it's not just based on property values, it's based on the stormwater that you're generating. So it's more directly, the price you pay is going to be more directly related to the stormwater you generate. And you can reduce the price you pay by doing stormwater management. I'll show you some examples of that. And it avoids the stormwater costs being embedded in other taxes and fees. So right now, you may get a single bill that's property taxes, may have your sewer bill on it. In some municipalities, it even has water on it. Okay, so stormwater utilities, it's something we didn't talk about very much in New Jersey in the past. Why is that? Because they weren't permitted. Back in March 2019, the governor signed legislation called the Clean Stormwater and Flood Reduction Act. That gave municipalities, counties, and certain authorities the ability to form stormwater utilities. Until that was signed, it was not legal in New Jersey to have a stormwater utility. It recognized problems affecting residents due to inadequate stormwater infrastructure management. Talked about health and safety issues, economic well-being, quality of life. It recognized that stormwater infrastructure in New Jersey lacked a dedicated source of funding for upgrades, and it allowed for a fee assessment based on, and this is important, a fair, equitable approximation of proportionate contribution of stormwater management, stormwater runoff. So the fee has to be related to the amount of stormwater that's being generated. So let's talk about some myths versus facts. I'm sure all of you have heard about the rain tax. That is the buzzword that gets thrown around to sort of bash stormwater utilities. It's just another tax. It's just another way to hammer the people of New Jersey and get more taxes out of them. The way I look at it is we're going to pay for this one way or the other. So we have to figure out what the most efficient way of doing that is. The stormwater utility generates a fee, not a tax. And the reason there's a difference is because the fee is provided in exchange for services received, and the fee is in proportion to the services that are received. Also, another big difference, as I mentioned before, is that you can reduce the fee by doing certain things if it's at a residential level on a home's lot, or a corporate campus, or even a public open space. Here's another fee, another myth versus fact, which is the stormwater utility will just create another bureaucracy. It could. There's no question about it. It could create another bureaucracy. However, if you're smart about it, maybe there's an existing municipality, a public works that's very active in a municipality that could handle it without having a separate department dealing with it. Or maybe there's a utility authority that's already a regional utility authority for multiple municipalities that would be interested in taking over stormwater as well. I have some sewerage authority clients that are actually interested in looking at this, because the way they look at it is, if we can find a way to address the non-point sources better, maybe they won't get so much pressure to reduce their sources. So from a very selfish perspective, they have a reason to consider it. And regionalization, I know I've said it before, but it really is a great way to save money and lead to more successful projects. So I think this is a great illustration of where we are now and how unfair it can be. So look at the picture on the left. Single family home, relatively compact home on a relatively small lot. That homeowner right now is paying for all the stormwater management in that municipality. It's really all the homeowners and certain commercial spaces that are taxable that are paying for stormwater management. But compare that to the picture on the right, which is a local school that is huge parking lots, that's generating hundreds of times more stormwater than the home is, and paying absolutely nothing for stormwater management because schools are exempt from municipal taxes. So that's just an illustration of how the stormwater utility could be used to solve that problem, because a utility can bill all people that generate stormwater. Now, maybe a school isn't the best example because that's going to end up in the municipal tax bill anyway, but churches, universities, Princeton, the municipality of Princeton is a great example. A huge percentage of land in Princeton is owned by the university. Well, Princeton University is not paying taxes on most of that land, so they're not paying for the stormwater management. Okay, so how does a stormwater utility work? I thought it would be good for you to have a sense of how it works. So you have to form the utility. You have to officially form the utility. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be a new group. It could be an existing municipality or county or association. You assess fees. Those fees, you have to determine how much money you need to spend. You have to develop a budget and then establish a fee. And I'll show you in a minute how that fee is assessed in some places. You want to promote green stormwater BMPs, and you have to provide credits for impact reduction. So if somebody builds a stormwater treatment device, they would get a credit off their stormwater utility fee. And then the funds that are collected as part of the utility would be reinvested in studies, design, engineering consulting, and then finally the actual construction of the solutions. And the money can go towards maintaining stormwater infrastructure, it can go towards repairing it, or it can go towards constructing new stormwater infrastructure. Now, New Jersey is not new. I mean, stormwater utilities is not a new concept at all. It is in New Jersey, but not across the U.S. There are nearly 1,700 stormwater utilities across the U.S. right now. And of those utilities, the typical annual fee for a stormwater utility customer on a residential level is about $50 a home, just to give you a sense of what nationally the numbers are like. And that may not be enough for some of the problems you folks face, but that is the national average. Let me give you an example. Minnesota. Minnesota is known for a lot of lakes, that's for sure. The city of Medina, Minnesota was formed, the utility was formed in 2008. It was formed to implement activities to address water quality impairments in a bunch of lakes in a certain region. they had a stormwater MS4 permit in that region that had certain requirements. They were in Minnesota, the stormwater MS4 permits are much more difficult to achieve than they are here. So there were actual requirements for certain stormwater upgrades. This was their way of paying for those upgrades. They more equitably distributed the charges for stormwater improvements to property owners than when they were doing it with general taxes. And also they started assessing non-paying entities like schools and churches. How did they calculate the fee? In Medina, they based it on residential equivalency factors. So they basically created all land to residential equivalence. And so a single family home is 1 REF. A multifamily residential, they somehow determined, was 5.3 REFs per acre. Undeveloped land was 0.1 REF per AFs. So you can see that they tried to simplify it. They didn't want to be calculating the exact amount of stormwater runoff on every acre of land, so they came up with this matrix that you could use that was relatively simple. Their annual cost per REF was $30.31. Down in Butner, North Carolina, they had a similar lake issue. Here they had a regional effort between 2 different counties and 3 different municipalities that were outside of those 2 counties. And they had a nutrient impairment to Falls Lake, a local lake, and they wanted to address new and existing development, agriculture, sewer, and failing septic systems. They provided the same services that were previously provided by the individual municipalities, but they saved a lot of money by banding together and doing it with one entity. It was much more economical. And it ended up resulting in better environmental health as well. Now here they did the fee a little bit differently. They had a fixed charge that everyone had to pay of $12. And then based on the gross area, they had another adding fee. So if you, for example, were a homeowner on a 1 acre lot, you paid the $12 fee, plus you paid another $25 for having 0 to 2 acres. And then you have an impervious charge. Single family home got hit with a $30 impervious charge. So if, again, a single family home would pay a total of $67 a year. And then other people that were not on single family developments were paying $30 per 3,100 square feet of land. So it just gives you a sense here, you know, $67 for the average homeowner. So that's what 2 people have done. I'm going to stop there. You've heard a lot of talking tonight, and this thing is buzzing your ears. But we're to the point where we can take some questions and have some discussion.